was unconscious on the festival stage when 50,000 fans watched something impossible happen. August 13th, 1992. Lollapalooza Festival. Chicago. The largest crowd Kurt Cobain had ever performed for stretched endlessly across the field. 50,000 people packed shoulder to shoulder under the blazing summer sun. Nirvana was the headline act, the moment everyone had been waiting for. But Kurt had been fighting something all day that no one in the crowd could see. He'd barely slept in 3 days. The pressure of headlining Lollapalooza, the constant media attention, and the weight of being called the voice of a generation had pushed him to his breaking point. His hands were shaking so violently during sound check that he'd dropped his guitar pick 4 times. He'd thrown up twice backstage, once in his dressing room, and again behind the equipment trucks where no one could see him fall apart. "Kurt, you sure you stir okay to do this?" Dave Grohl had asked, watching his bandmate pace frantically behind the stage curtain. "We can postpone, man. Tell them you stir sick." 50,000 people, Dave," Kurt had replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "They came here for us. I can let them down. I once let them down. But 50,000 people were waiting, and Kurt refused to let them down, even if it killed him." The show started perfectly. Smells Like Teen Spirit sent the massive crowd into a frenzy that could be felt for miles. Kurt fed off their energy like a man possessed, running across the enormous stage, his blonde hair whipping in the hot Chicago wind. For 45 minutes, he was everything those 50,000 people needed him to be: their voice, their rebellion, their escape from everything that hurt. Then, during the opening chords of Come As You Are, it happened. Kurt was mid-verse when his vision started tunneling. The crowd became a blur of faces. The music sounded like it was coming from underwater, and his legs gave out completely. He collapsed face first onto the stage, his guitar feedback screaming through the sound system as 50,000 people watched their hero fall. The crowd's roar turned to horrified silence in seconds. Thousands of people pushed forward, trying to get closer, trying to help somehow, creating a wave of human panic that security struggled to control. But what nobody knew was that at the exact moment Kurt hit the stage, 60-year-old Margaret Torres was having a massive heart attack in the general admission section. Margaret had saved for 2 years to afford the Lollapalooza ticket. She worked double shifts as a night nurse at Chicago General Hospital, setting aside every spare dollar because this concert meant everything to her. Her daughter Sarah had introduced her to Nirvana's music during Margaret's cancer treatments the previous year. When the chemotherapy made her too sick to sleep, when the radiation burned her skin raw, when she wanted to give up completely, Sarah would sit beside her hospital bed playing Come As You Are on repeat. "Listen to the words, Mom," Sarah would say. "Come as you are, as you were, as I want you to be. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be strong all the time. You just have to be you, and that sip's enough." Kurt's voice had carried Margaret through 9 months of hell. His songs became her prayers. His lyrics became her strength. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration. Margaret had been cancer-free for 6 months, and this was her victory concert, her way of saying thank you to the music that had saved her soul. When Kurt collapsed on stage, Margaret clutched her chest and dropped to her knees in the crowd. The massive heart attack hit her like a freight train, crushing pain radiating down her left arm as her world went dark. But in a sea of 50,000 people all focused on the unconscious rock star, nobody noticed the elderly woman fighting for her life. Nobody except Kurt Cobain. Even unconscious, something extraordinary was happening. Kurt's body was motionless on the stage, paramedics rushing toward him from all directions, but his eyes suddenly snapped open with an intensity that startled everyone around him. He wasn't looking at the medical crew or responding to their questions. He was staring directly into the crowd with laser focus, as if he could see through thousands of people to find one specific person. "There," Kurt whispered, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "Section C, woman in the red shirt. She sips dying." The lead paramedic, Jim Rodriguez, looked confused. He'd been working concerts for 15 years and had never seen anything like this. "Kurt, you need to stay down. You had some kind of collapse. We need to get you to a hospital." "No," Kurt screamed with a strength that shocked everyone, struggling to sit up despite the medical equipment being attached to him. His voice carried an urgency that made everyone stop what they were doing. "Red shirt, section C. Heart attack. She sips dying right now. What happened next would be talked about for decades. Kurt fought off the paramedics with desperate strength, grabbing the microphone with shaking hands. His voice carried across the silent festival grounds, reaching every corner of the massive field. Listen to me. There's a woman in Section C wearing a red shirt. Who needs help right now? She's having a heart attack. Everyone around her, look down. Look around you. Find her and help her to the front. Move. The crowd was stunned into silence. Their unconscious hero had somehow awakened not to save himself, but to save someone else's life. Margaret Torres was wearing a red Nirvana shirt. Within seconds, the crowd in Section C was looking around frantically, confused but trusting Kurt's desperate plea. A 17-year-old named Marcus spotted Margaret first. She was unconscious on the ground, her lips turning blue, her breathing shallow and labored. Here she is, he shouted, his voice cracking with fear and adrenaline. What followed was the most incredible display of human cooperation ever seen at a music festival. 50,000 people, many of them strangers who had never spoken to each other, created a human corridor from Section C to the front of the stage in under 3 minutes. Margaret was passed overhead, hand to hand through a sea of strangers who had become a rescue team united by one purpose. Careful with her head, someone shouted. She's not breathing right, called another voice. Keep her steady. Almost there. Kurt, still barely able to stand, watched every second of Margaret's journey to safety. As the crowd carried her toward the stage, he never took his eyes off her, somehow knowing that his connection to this stranger was the most important thing he would ever experience. That sep's her, he kept saying to the medical crew, tears streaming down his face. That sep's the woman I saw. That sep's why this happened. That sep's why it collapsed. When Margaret reached the front of the stage, Kurt did something that left 50,000 people speechless. He climbed down from the stage against direct medical orders and knelt beside her stretcher, taking her hand in his. Margaret, he said, somehow knowing her name though they never met. You are going to be okay. Your daughter Sarah is proud of you. You fought cancer and won. You can fight this too. Stay with us. Margaret Sepp's eyes fluttered open. She looked at Kurt with recognition and wonder. Her voice barely a whisper. How do you know about Sarah? You were calling for help, Kurt said simply, his own voice breaking with emotion. I heard you, somehow. I heard you. The paramedics later confirmed that Margaret had been clinically dead for almost 2 minutes, the exact time Kurt had been unconscious on stage. Her heart had stopped completely, and by all medical logic, she should have died in that crowd. But somehow, impossibly, Kurt's intervention had reached her in time. Dr. Sarah Chen, the emergency physician who treated Margaret, would later write in her medical journal, in 25 years of emergency medicine, I have never seen a cardiac arrest victim survive that long without immediate CPR. By the time we reached Mrs. Torres, she should have been beyond resuscitation, but her vital signs stabilized within minutes of Mr. Cobain's contact with her. I cannot explain what I witnessed that night. As the ambulance drove away with Margaret stabilized and conscious, Kurt finally allowed the medical team to examine him. Tests showed severe dehydration and exhaustion, but nothing that could explain how he'd pinpointed one person's medical emergency in a crowd of 50,000 while unconscious himself. But Kurt wasn't finished. Despite the medical team's protests, he walked back to the microphone. Still weak but more determined than anyone had ever seen him. That woman's name is Margaret Torres. She's been fighting cancer, and tonight she almost lost that fight, but she didn't. We didn't let her, because that's what music is really about, taking care of each other. The crowd erupted in applause, but Kurt held up his hand for silence. Margaret, if you're listening from the hospital, I want you to know something. You saved my life tonight too. When I collapsed, I was giving up. The pressure, the expectations, the weight of trying to be something I'm not, it was killing me. But seeing your fight, feeling your strength, reminded me why we're all here. We don't quit on each other, ever. His voice grew stronger as he continued. I don't know how I knew you needed help. I don't understand what happened out there, but I know that music isn't just about entertainment. It's about connection. It's about the invisible threads that tie us all together, especially when someone is drowning and needs us to throw them a lifeline. Kurt then did something unprecedented in rock history. He dedicated the rest of the show to Margaret, playing every song as if she were the only person in the audience. He performed for 3 more hours, running on pure adrenaline and determination, transforming what could have been a tragic night into something magical. During Come As You Are, he changed the lyrics. Come as you are, Margaret Torres, as you were, as I want you to be. Come as you are, Section C, as a friend, as a family. The most incredible part was still to come. Margaret Torres not only survived, she made a full recovery, but her connection with Kurt had just begun. From her hospital bed, she watched bootleg footage of the festival on the news and realized something impossible. Kurt had described her daughter Sarah perfectly during their brief exchange, down to details he couldn't have known. Sarah's favorite song, her college major, even her childhood nickname Sunshine that Margaret had never told anyone outside the family. "Mom," Sarah said, visiting the next day, "how did he know I was studying music therapy? How did he know about the nickname Dad gave me when I was 3? You never told anyone about that." Margaret had no answer. All she knew was that for those few moments, Kurt Cobain had somehow been connected to the deepest parts of her life in ways that science couldn't explain. 2 weeks later, Margaret received a handwritten letter from Kurt. "Dear Margaret, I've been thinking about our moment at Lollapalooza every day since it happened. I can't explain how I knew you needed help, or how I knew about Sarah, or why your heart stopping made me collapse on stage. All I know is that something connected us that night, and it changed everything I thought I knew about why I make music. You showed me that artists don't just perform for crowds. We're connected to every single person in ways we don't understand. Thank you for fighting to stay with us. Thank you for showing me that love is stronger than death, that music can reach across impossible distances, and that we're all responsible for each other. The world needs people like you, Kurt." Margaret kept that letter with her for the rest of her life. More importantly, she began attending Kurt's concerts whenever possible, not as just a fan, but as someone who understood the deeper connection between artist and audience. The medical mystery of that night was never solved. How had Kurt, while unconscious, identified a medical emergency in a specific section of a 50,000-person crowd? How had he known personal details about Margaret and her daughter? Why had his collapse coincided exactly with Margaret's heart attack? Dr. James Mitchell, the emergency room physician who treated both Kurt and Margaret that night, later wrote in a medical journal, "In 30 years of emergency medicine, I've never seen anything like what happened at Lollapalooza. Kurt Cobain displayed what can only be described as a form of consciousness that science doesn't yet understand, the synchronicity of events. His collapse, her heart attack, his immediate knowledge of her location and condition defies every medical explanation I know." The festival footage became legendary. Videos of 50,000 people creating a human rescue chain went viral before viral was even a concept. But more than the spectacle, it was Kurt Sepp's explanation that resonated with millions. Music isn't just sound waves, it's connection. When 50,000 people focus their energy in one place, something bigger than entertainment happens. We become one consciousness, and sometimes that consciousness can do impossible things. That night, we all became one heart, beating together, and when one part of that heart was in trouble, the whole system responded. The incident changed how Kurt approached performing forever. He began incorporating moments of silence into his shows, asking crowds to send positive energy to anyone who might be struggling. He called these moments Margaret Breaks, in honor of the woman who had taught him about the true power of collective human consciousness. "Close your eyes," he would tell audiences. "Feel the person next to you. Feel everyone in this room. We stir all connected. If someone here is hurting, we all feel it. If someone here is healing, we all share that too." Margaret Torres lived for 18 more years after that night, cancer-free and healthy. She attended 47 more Kurt Cobain concerts before his death, always sitting in Section C as a tribute to their connection. After Kurt died, she established the Section C Foundation to provide emergency medical training at music festivals. The foundation has since saved over 200 lives at concerts worldwide. The most powerful part of Margaret Sepp's story came in her final interview before her death in 2012. When asked about that night at Lollapalooza, she said, "People think Kurt saved my life, but it was more than that. He showed 50,000 people that we're all connected in ways we don't understand, that when someone is in trouble, we all feel it somewhere deep inside, and we all have the power to help. Kurt didn't just save my life. He proved that love and connection are more powerful than anything science can measure. He showed the world that music isn't just entertainment, it's medicine, it's prayer, it's the invisible thread that holds us all together. Today, every major music festival has Section C medical stations strategically placed throughout the crowd. These stations are staffed by volunteers trained in emergency response, and they're marked with signs that read, Margaret Torres Memorial Emergency Response. When someone needs help, we all feel it. The bootleg video of Kurt's collapse and Margaret's rescue is still shared millions of times every year, not just by music fans, but by medical professionals, consciousness researchers, and anyone studying the unexplained connections between human beings. Kurt Cobain proved that night that artists aren't just entertainers, they're conduits for human connection that can transcend physical limitations and create miracles when they're needed most. The unconscious rock star, who saved a stranger's life, showed the world that music isn't just about sound, it's about the invisible threads that connect every human heart, especially when someone is calling for help.